What are the consequences of unethical coaching in a product, software, technical product organization? What are the consequences of someone ballsing up when it comes to that ethical guidelines?
Let's take the first topic in the Code of Ethical Conduct is protecting confidentiality, intellectual property, and information security. As a coach, I will know if the people I'm working with are being open and honest with me and I'm helping them improve. I will know a lot about where they're not doing so well. And I want to help them get better. But then their manager comes to me and says, I need to choose who to fire. We've got budget cuts. Tell me about my people.
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between Agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual excellence. We find ourselves here again on the Product Agility Podcast with the one and only Shane Hastie. Hello, Shane.
Thank you for having me back.
It's been so long, we've managed to wash exactly the same set of clothes and wear them on the second time around. Thank you very much for coming back for this conversation. Last time around, we spoke about your brilliant book written in collaboration with two other gentlemen called The Rock Crusher. And we promised our listeners that this time around, we're going to explore, well, a topic which is been close to my heart for a long time, because of my own personal journey. It's a problem, an issue which I come across all the time when people first come onto our Agile coaching course, or when I'm trying to explain Agile coaching or product coaching to people, which is this. Let me see if I can articulate it succinctly. Professional coaching is well known. And we have organizations such as the ICF being probably one of the largest and arguably maybe the most respected international coaching bodies out there, who have done a great deal for making sure that professional coaches act in an ethical way and guide the coachee on their own journey without influencing, inferring, without adding any of their own thoughts into that. So it's the coachee's goal, it's the coachee's journey. The coach is just facilitating that process. And then all of a sudden we start talking about agile coaching and product coaching, and within which people then start saying, oh, we need some professional coaching in this. And when you look back at the original Agile X-Wing, of which you can find if you Google it, I'll pop a link into the description as well. It talks about professional coaching being part of agile coaching. This has now changed somewhat when you look at the Agile Coaching Mastery Wheel, where it talks about coaching mindset and coaching skills. But I think that this idea around professional coaching still causes people headaches. How can one be or use a coaching mindset or be a professional coach in that agile coaching or product coaching capacity? And it's that topic which I would like us to delve into, but also picking up the topic of ethics, which I see as a very real problem, which is the lack of historical ethical guidance. I know it now exists, but actually maybe the prevalence of unethical agile and product coaching, which may or may not be as wide as I suspect it is. So Shane, welcome back. And in true coaching form, I'm wondering, Shane, with what I've introduced the world to as a topic for this conversation, where would you like to start?
Where would we start?
Straight from the Coaching 101 playbook, that one.
So what is coaching? Now, huge range from performance coaching, like a sports coach, where they are focused on instilling skills in people and helping them enhance those skills. And performance coaching has a place. If you look at a professional sports team, they will have 5 or 6 performance coaches who get better through giving them advice, showing them what to do, and teaching them the skill. And that is part of what we would want people to do in an agile state. But then at the other end of that coaching spectrum is the what you've just done with me, the showing up with curiosity, coming from the stance that the client has the answer within themselves. My job is to help them find it through powerful questions and silence and presence and so forth. So there's a continuum. Lisa Atkins, Michael Spade did a wonderful job of defining the competency framework for agile coaching and looking at some of the areas that fall into that. If I take those two extremes, I would say that the agile coaching framework says across these extremes, the coach in an agile space needs to be able to very deliberately know what behavior is appropriate. So there may be times when a teach stance is perfectly appropriate. If I'm working with a team and they're struggling with implementing a particular DevOps tool, it's not good enough for me to take the professional coach stance and say, how would you like to start? It is probably better for me to say, when I did this in this organization, here is how we started. What do you think? As a mentor, or you've never done this before. Here are the steps that are in the manual. Let's follow them sequentially, and do you see how that works now? As a teacher, the one I struggle with, which I don't think really fits particularly well in that spectrum, is the consultant telling you what to do without communicating the why behind. So what is the stance that you're in? What is the perspective that you're taking? And from that, then what does this team or individual need from me?
It reminds me of a comment that somebody put on one of my posts on LinkedIn today, actually, just saying how if you give a chisel and a hammer to a sculptor and give them some stone, they'll produce something beautiful. If you give that same chisel and a hammer to a dog, they'll just chew it. And I think that when you look at the range of possible ways that you can intervene, the different ways, the stances you can stand in as an agile, I love product coaching here as well, because I don't think there's a huge degree of difference. If I'm honest, we're still talking about having to have some experience, having had some skin in the game to be able to help people through certain situations. That I think this is maybe then part of my not beef, but it feels very optimistic when you look at the agile. Even if you forget the original agile competency, that X-Wing by Michael Spade and Lisa Adkins, and you look at the new Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, which is agilecoachinggrowthwheel.org. There's so much on there. I got something called a PGCE. So it's like a third of a master's in executive and team coaching. Took me, 2 years to get to that? And that is one part of the whole thing. And I can imagine people looking at the enormity of this and saying, wow, okay, like I've got to learn all of this. And as much as we say, no, you don't have to learn all of it. I think for people to become adequately proficient in actually having real kind of coaching skills and then be able to know when to advise and be able to facilitate, it's a lot to ask of people.
If we look at the vast majority of people who step into that agile coaching space, their skills are wide and often quite shallow. And I think that's a risk. The self-awareness that is necessary is incredibly important to know where your depth is and where can I step in. In the original framework, the Agile Lean practitioner as the overarching. So yes, you bring that. How good a teacher do you need to be? How good a mentor do you need to be? How good a facilitator? If I just look at those four and then the technical business or transformation mastery that sits underneath it, if I rank myself, I think, yes, I'm pretty deep as an Agile Lean practitioner. I have written books in the space. I've gone down that path. And in the wedges at the bottom of the business master, a business technical or transformation mastery, my business and product space is quite deep. I would not call myself a technical master at the moment. I last wrote code in Anger. If I'm working with a software development team, I last wrote code in Anger in 2016. So my skills are out of date there. I would not be the right person to teach them about implementing a DevOps framework. And that self-awareness is really important to say, I'm not the right person for this. Let us find somebody who does have. Or let us explore this together because I do have some curiosity. And as long as I have made it very clear to the team, I don't know that, but I'm good at learning. Can we learn together? That's okay. If I think and I see how they need coaching in this, they need help in this, I can help you with this, and I'll go and read a book tonight and come tomorrow, and I'm just ahead of you, but hey, it's good, right? Yeah, no.
Okay. So in the previous episode, there was something that I really wanted to mention. And if you haven't heard that episode, then shame on you, go back and give it a listen. And if you want a good reason to, here's why. That we were talking about how to get things ready for teams to deliver, to stand a good chance they're going to be valuable, they're going to work. And speaking about how the role of business analysis or just analysis skill sets have been slowly diminished over the years in many organizations that have embraced Agile to their detriment. And I do recall one of the early things I was taught as a business analyst was that the users and customers, stakeholders, they don't actually know what they want. So you have to lead them to it a little bit, Ben. You will know better than them at the kind of thing that's going to meet their needs. Part of your role is to help them in that respect. And they're not going to know what they know. They're not going to know what they want until they see it, what they're going to like. So you just make sure that it ends up being that. And I think that trap, that ego trap, and I think lots of business analysts have got very egotistical in the same way I think historically a lot of Agile coaches have got very egotistical. And I think this has been to the detriment of what could have been a really marvelous thing. I think it's kind of slowly eroded because Agile coaches believe they have all the answers because they've read half the book or listened to the blink, which the team didn't get round to listening to. They come in and they throw around some words and they hold themselves well and they're getting paid decent money. And so they feel like they have to give all the advice, and they feel like actually they're not going to be curious and they're not going to listen. They are just going there and prove how much they're worth and feed their ego even more. But actually, it's probably just a defense mechanism. But I think that's part of the issue. Then, when we look at some of this, is that it's hard for people to have a coaching mindset and to have it's called a self-mastery, which I think is a little bit of a wanky term for it. But what we're talking about here is reflection and improvement. Yeah. It's about who you are as how you coach. And really understanding who you are, not mastering yourself, but just understanding more about you is phenomenally useful. And I think lots of Agile coaches, and there are product coaches out there as well that I have met very similar to this, far too egotistical for their own good.
Yeah, I would have to say I'm totally in agreement with you. I see humility and self-awareness is something that I think is lacking. Like you, I've done a deep professional coach qualification. I did the New Zealand Institute of Coaching, Leadership and Transformation Coach. That was a 9-month intensive personal transformation exercise. And in that, the know yourself was incredibly important. And I would encourage anyone who does hold themselves up in a coaching stance to go down that pathway, one of those deep professional coaching qualifications, because they do, in my experience, they make you more self-aware. And as you are self-aware, you can then better serve the team. And coaching is a service that we offer to teams. It should truly embody everything that we talk about in servant leadership. We're holding the space. And even when I'm stepping into the teacher stance, I'm doing it in service of this group of people, not in service of my ego.
There was something which somebody said to me, which I didn't want to believe until I realized that they were probably saying it to me because I really needed to hear it, which was actually, if you want to know a hallmark of a good coach, is that they're an awesome coachee. And actually, that was one of the biggest journeys I went on personally. Yeah, huge amount of self-awareness, huge amount of self-discovery. I came out, and it annoys me to say it, but people were right. I came out slightly different. My COO at the time, who used to run a professional coaching company, did say to me, when you go on a professional coaching course, Ben, you'll never see such a vast collection of broken people all in the same place. And you know what? I think everyone's a bit broken. I think good coaching courses give us a mechanism by which to deal with some of that stuff, which we haven't dealt with. And the relationships that we built then are still strong now, 5 years later. With some, 5 years later, we're still in touch. We're still meeting up. But the thing is that when someone said to me that basically you need to get better at being a coachee, there was so much that I wasn't open and willing to have challenged about myself. The moment I let myself be coached was the day I became a better coach. At different level. I wonder how many product and agile coaches out there have an actual real professional coach. And you look at ICF, you want to be a member of the ICF or EMCC or a big coaching body, you need supervision. If you're going to go for that deep coaching qualification, such as yourself, you're going to do some level of group supervision because it's necessary, and that just isn't present in the agile coaching and the product coaching industries at the moment. There are no master coaches, there are no people who are taking us through, and I think this is where I think it gets very dangerous because you get, and I'm going to say this, like you get egotistical, overzealous product and agile coaches overstepping their boundaries, doing things that they're not capable of doing, and as a consequence then end up breaching ethical boundaries as to how they are intending to help or try and help an organization.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and that is one of the reasons that unethical behavior is one of the reasons why myself, Craig Smith, Alex Slowly, and a group of 30 plus volunteers came up with a code of ethical conduct for agile coaching. The code is on version 2. It's published on the Agile Alliance website. We did this under the auspices of the Agile Alliance because they are an umbrella body for the Agile community. And we didn't want it to be linked to any of the individual certification bodies. What I've been really pleased about is that the certification bodies have got on board. But Scrum.org have supported it tremendously. IC Agile have supported it. Scrum Alliance have been part of it. So the bodies who are training Agile coaches have at least started to incorporate ethics in their learning. And this whole thing came out of a conversation 3-4 years ago at an Agile conference late at night over far too much alcohol. A group of us were bemoaning the unethical behavior we had seen, and somebody challenged us. I can't remember who it was, and said, "What are you going to do about it? You are the community who can do something about it." And Craig and myself, Craig at the time was on the Agile Alliance board. I had been on the board, so we knew that this mechanism existed to get initiatives done. And we said, okay, yes, we can try and do something about it. It's been a fascinating journey and coming up with...
Let's frame it for people a little bit here, Shane, because I can imagine people being like, who cares? Honestly, I think ethics are like morals or like emotions. I think it's very hard for people to be able to label one and point at one and say, that's ethical. That's an ethical consideration. That's a moral consideration. Damn, I'm no expert. I'm not claiming to be. But I think that maybe to help frame this for people, what are the consequences of unethical coaching in a product, software, technical product organization? What are the consequences of someone ballsing it up when it comes to that ethical guidelines?
Let's take the first topic in the Code of Ethical Conduct is protecting confidentiality, intellectual property, and information security. As a coach, I will know if the people I'm working with are being open and honest with me and I'm helping them improve. I will know a lot about where they're not doing so well. And I want to help them get better. But then their manager comes to me and says, I need to choose who to fire. We've got budget cuts. Tell me about my people. What happened here? If I'm acting in accordance with I will protect information shared with me and only disclose it for legal reasons, or when I have clear agreement with my client and stakeholders, I would respond to that manager with, sorry, I can't tell you about the conversation I had with that person without their consent. That doesn't happen.
To be fair, if it did happen, LinkedIn would be a very quiet place.
Yeah. Acting within my ability is the second one. I will be open and transparent about my skills, experience, and qualifications. So my story from earlier of sitting with the team and helping them implement a particular DevOps, I've never done that. Not pretending that, hey, yeah, I can maybe help with this. Be honest and say, I've never done that. I'm happy to explore it with you, or can I find the right person for you?
I think that has the darker side of it that I've seen is when they've read a coaching book, they've had some subpar training around agile coaching, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. That they start putting up powerful questions, certain techniques, and actually then put people in situations that they didn't want to deal with what's coming up. And then they are not skillful enough to then deal with what is coming up. And as a consequence, people get harmed. I remember there was one moment, and I'll just keep it very vague. It was a number of moments, a number of times in numerous organizations where an agile coach had asked somebody a very powerful, open-ended question in a group environment without asking for permission, without having invitation. And then the person who's asked the question didn't really feel like they had any option but to answer.
Yeah.
And I think that is such an awful situation to put another human in. It got to me a lot. And I think that's why I was so pleased to see the code of ethics coming out. Now, I'm going to loop this back around. And again, maybe this is my strong opinion on it. For me, the ethical work that you did is incredibly important. And it's, for me, as important as maybe someone saying, but actually, you've got powerful questions. Actually, we shouldn't use them anymore. As hypothetical, right? If someone turned around and said, powerful questions, turns out they're really dangerous, turns out they can put people in bad situations, they can make things go wrong, can mean that you end up giving information up and breaking confidentiality. But actually say, we're not going to do powerful questions anymore. There's a big impact there. And then IC Agile, as an example, took that on. Then I would expect them to have some kind of gradual monitoring and checking process that people actually implemented that bloody learning outcome. Since they said about having the ethics as part of the coaching course, I've not been aware of them actually going through and spot checking or asking for retrospective courses. Has it actually been integrated? Because this is important.
I saw something from them the other day where one of the learning outcomes, one set of learning outcomes was updated, and the courses didn't need a complete reaccreditation, but we did have to, and there's a certain level there of trust in the individual and trust in the organization. We had to send our material in for just a quick review, so show me where you've made the change, and that everybody who teaches the course signed a document that said, I've reviewed it, we've had a train the trainer, or we've spoken to the instructors about this content change, and they have confirmed that they understand the content change. And I'm sure I saw something about the code of ethics or in the Agile coaching classes that had a similar assert that you have looked at this.
Yeah. So let me see here. All I got was something saying, we encourage you to make instructors aware.
Okay.
Back in May. Nothing else. And I'm not saying it's a blanket thing, but I would expect more than an encouragement.
Yeah.
There is trust, but trust is like democracy.
Yeah.
Works sometimes, doesn't work at other times. And I just make the point because there's something I'm very passionate about, and I think something which really needs to have a light shone on it, because I think this is the danger of a lack of appreciation of many people haven't been on a professional coaching course, so didn't get it anyway, and two, there's been some great work done, so why isn't it more front and center? Why isn't there more of a movement on it? But maybe I'm just, I've got my head in the clouds a little bit here. I'm standing on my high horse without any real, I'm not getting off my arse and doing anything like you guys did.
I'm with you in the why don't more people hold on to this and hold it up? And as the authors, the volunteer community put this together, we're slowly getting the message out. The Alliance is slowly getting the message out. It's not a funded initiative, so that means we don't have lots of money to do marketing with it. But situations like this, where we're having the conversation now, hopefully thousands of people will watch this and go and look at the Code of Ethical Conduct and start to ask the coaches that they work with, have you committed to this Code of Ethical Conduct? Will organizations start to include it as part of the coaching, the agreement when they engage coaches, either as employees or as consultants, to have you committed to this code of ethical conduct? So when the clients start pushing for it, I do believe we will get.
Yeah, no, you're right, because there's a whole system around this. You're absolutely right, and I think that many people will hunt out an ICF accredited coach because they've told that these are people that have a high ethical standard and will proceed to do things in a certain way.
Yeah.
And in the agile coaching world and the product coaching world, still in its kind of infancy, that there isn't that kind of professionalism that comes into it. From say professionalism, maybe that's harsh, but there isn't an understanding that's bled into it.
Yeah. And the thing that the ICF has is that we don't have at the moment in the agile coaching space at all, is there's a commitment. You have to sign the ICF Code of Ethical Conduct when you become an ICF accredited coach, and you are consciously putting yourself under the discipline of that body. So there is a complaints process. There is a mechanism whereby a complaint will impose a penalty. Now, the penalty is, the worst they can do is cancel your certification. So it's not, in life terms, you're not going to prison or anything, but it still is there is a deliberate discipline around this. Now, we don't have this for agile coaching, and I want to put a yet on that. One of the challenges is how and where and who will administer this thing. We would then need some form of a registration process, some form of a payments process to maintain that registration, and to pay for things like the ethics. The another wonderful thing that the ICF provides is, if as a coach you are struggling with an ethical dilemma, you can actually ask them, and they will give you advice.
I was just looking at, where will things change? Because this is where I recall doing my 2 recordings for the ICF and knowing that my recordings were going to be marked against the code of ethics.
Yeah.
And being prepared for that. And we were told about a wonderful technique called Stokers. And so if you go through Stokers, ask these questions, and you've ticked off a vast proportion of that. And I think this is where I'm doing lots of analysis at the moment on certifications and certification bodies and organizations providing training. And there isn't, so much of it is knowledge-based and not skills-based.
Yeah.
But there's some little tweaks that could be made perhaps into saying that when you are doing a coaching demonstration, that what you're looking for is to tick off some of the kind of code of ethics guidelines. I think there is something around, maybe there is just some organic way that supervision, like group supervision, could bleed its way in, and actually you are going through these considerations. But I think these things take a level of conscientiousness that perhaps so far has been missing in our industry, which is a pity. But I would love it if it got to a point where there was, I'm not saying it's the same as the ICF, but more ICF, because I think
that's in the vision for the Code of Ethics initiative is, where do we go? We're having some conversations with the Alliance at the moment. Shortly, there will be a mechanism on the Agile Alliance website for people to sign the Code of Ethical Conduct. And the list of signatories will then be visible. The public statement, yes, I have committed to this. Will the Agile Alliance ever get to the point where it will police the ethical behavior? I don't know.
But that's the same way that with the ICF, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a quality gate, as it were, but it's not policed. It's down to people to be reported. But
it's reporting.
Yeah. Was there a mechanism to have? Yeah, I don't know. It gets a bit heavy at that point. It was something. This sounds like a lot of effort. And is there a big problem there to solve? But what I have found very interesting is I was fortunate enough to be taught by two people called. That's a crap way to start a sentence. They weren't both called the same thing. One person called Paul Barber, another called Lucy Widdowson, who wrote a great book called Building Great High-Performing Teams or Building Great Performing Teams. And they were my lecturers at Henley Business School when I did my team coaching certificate. And what blew me away, many things blew me away about what they were talking about. But one of the biggest things was actually this idea of co-coaching. And they said, when they do a team coaching, they don't do it alone. And I was like, oh, shit the bed. That's where everyone's going wrong, right? Because agile coaches, product coaches are often brought in as the people that can solve all the problems when you can't solve all the bloody problems. And when people then turn around to me and we'll root this in agile for a second, as an example, and people say, I'm not a technical scrum master. I'm like, why don't you co-scrum master the team? Why don't two scrum masters, one technical, one not, look after 3 or 4 teams? If you're a product coach and when it comes to user research, you are not there. But when it comes to helping people do other forms, let's say market research, or when it comes to some prioritization techniques or road mapping, you're bang on, then find another coach that you can partner with. You work together and you span the system and you bring those different skill sets in so that you're not then trying to help out in areas where you should probably leave well alone. And I wonder, will there be a future where co-coaching becomes more of a thing?
I've certainly seen it. And it's beautiful when it happens. And I've had the opportunity a few times to work in environments where we've got multiple coaches who do have different strengths. And then we can draw upon each other and understanding and being able to say, no, for this piece, I'm not the right person, but hey, I've got access to this person. That I found really powerful. And having it's the supervision thing, but also just having a community that I can come to, a peer community that I can come to and say, oh, I'm struggling with this. In the code of ethics, we actually talk to that under the professional development. There it is, introspection and continuing professional development. It's section 3. I will engage with a peer group or mentor to explore ethical and other challenges in my agile coaching work, explicitly calling it out. I will seek to improve my self-awareness and effectiveness through introspection and professional development. We didn't go so far as to say supervision because there isn't a supervision structure yet, but I've certainly benefited phenomenally from the supervision process that the ICF encourage all coaches to be part of.
I wonder, and I think we should probably begin to draw this conversation to a close. I've kept you for quite long enough, but my thought here is that if there was a certification created, let's say, for agile coaching supervision, in the same way the ICF have courses on coaching supervision, all of a sudden you wouldn't get everyone going along to that. Fair enough, but the thought and effort into building up some learning outcomes, understand what knowledge gaps are, to get it out there, to market that to agile coaches, to raise the awareness, might be an interesting hack to actually get people really considering what this is all about and how it's different than professional coaching supervision. It would have to be different, but I think it could be different and very beneficial for any type of kind of product or agile coach if it was structured in such a way that spoke to solving real challenges on the ground and maintaining this ethical, make sure you're aligned ethically and ultimately, and I firmly believe this, that things like co-coaching, and if you look at professional team coaching, particularly gives so much, and there's a lot we can learn from those worlds. So maybe one day if there's a certification was to arise, then perhaps that would begin some kind of movement.
Yeah, and the challenge is that the certification at that level would need to be a competency certification, not a knowledge certification.
Yeah.
So the level of the IC Agile expert certifications and those programs.
Yeah, I wonder. But anyway, I was going to go down a rabbit hole. But let's not do that because I'm not sure if it's going to be interested, Shane. Thank you so much for, one, indulging me on this conversation. It's one I've been wanting to have with you for such a long time, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for being so open and honest and just, willing to have the conversation. It means a lot.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed the conversations, and we'll find a way to continue them.
I would love to. I'd love to meet up with you one day, but you're too bloody far away. No, I'm too far away. I'm look at that, putting it on you. I'm too far away, Shane. I'm too far away. If I think back to what we've spoken about, we started off looking at this whole topic on professional coaching and agile coaching and professional coaching, product coaching, and Where does it start? What are some of the considerations we need to make? How does this professional coaching mindset or the coaching mindset really fit into what a lot of you listening are doing day to day? And I think we explored that and we came up with some good answers. And then we went on to talking about the ethical considerations and the great work Shane has done with other volunteers under the umbrella of the Agile Alliance to really make clear an Agile coaching code of ethics, which is ever evolving and will have people signing up to it in the foreseeable future. And I do urge, whether you're a product coach, whether you're an Agile coach, whether you're someone that works with one of these coaches, one of these types of coaches, please do go check out that code of ethics. There'll be a link in the description. There's some really awesome stuff in there, and it might help you find someone that can better help you improve your performance. So on that note, I thank you all once again for listening. And again, big thank you to you, Shane, for coming along. We will be back here again next week. So we'll see you then. Thank you very much.